Hey everyone, so Battle for Azeroth is almost here, and that means that it's time to share the UIs that I'm going to be rolling with and I've got set up for this expansion. And yep, there's multiple of them. The first one is a one-size-fits-all generic UI. It's the basic one I use for every class. I then have my immersive keyboard and mouse UI and my action RPG controller UI setup thing that really makes WoW feel like a different game, which is perfect for a slower, narrative-focused run through BFA or maybe the max-level war campaigns. I'm also going to be covering my key binding process in this video as well, and this is more of a showcase. There are going to be written installation guides that are for the UIs. It's all pretty simple, and that will be linked below. Now, before that, you all know Discord, and they've actually sponsored this video because of their new re-engineered overlay that's got a bunch of new features. So first, you can see the message and server window on the overlay, and you can use this to join voice channels, with text channels actually coming out later next week. You're able to control things like a user's volume as per normal, and on that topic, they've also released Priority Speaker, which is a core feature for raid teams. Then, when you exit the overlay, you can see that the voice channel is pinned in a transparent overlay. You can toggle that on and off, and what's great is it lets you quickly see who's talking in your group. Now, this will also work with text channels once they release next week, which means that, say, your guild Discord chat can be right there in-game with you seamlessly, as if it was part of the regular UI. It also handles Discord notifications, and they're working on a home bar that will give you even more control. And all of this stuff is movable and customizable to fit your existing UI. It's a really cool set of features, and it could be a great addition to your UI. Text channels released today, with pinning coming out next week, so be sure to check it out, and thank you to them for sponsoring this video. Okay, let's kick it off with my generic UI. So this was created for my class review series, and the intent is that it would just generically work across every class regardless of what I was playing. I wanted to minimize the need for weak auras or really any add-ons past Elf UI. Of course, I do use many other add-ons, but the point is that this works great by default. So walking through the UI, the first thing that you probably notice is the rather odd position of my primary two action bars, and how the action bars are not full size. They are pretty high on the screen, and this is basically to keep your eyes up. Of course, as many of you know, you often end up with your eyes glued to your bars. You're not supposed to do that. Sometimes you can't help but do that, and this setup sort of helps with that. It also pushes them high enough that you can see your main ability cooldowns, which creates a very low barrier to entry, weak aura-like sort of look, which means that it's easy to keep up with what's going on with your core spells. That said, I of course do use weak auras for more advanced things, but I found that this is a very convenient default for most players. And one of the things that's quite nice is that really all of the default tracking of stuff is just there. It's very simple above the bars. If you're okay with breaking the visual flow a little bit, you could move those bars higher in the Elf UI settings if you want. Then your primary resource bar is pretty damn big and noticeable, as is the enemy cast bar. Having that be prominent in your UI is extremely important, as so much of the dungeon and raid mechanics involve successfully interrupting enemies, so it's a good idea to do that well. Now, I do have a lower action bar, and you can see that's where I put most of my utility cooldowns, and normally that's something that I track with a weak aura, so having that bar not being extremely prominent, that's fine. The other thing about this UI that I like is that it's visually clean because it's using Elf, and it's all nice and consistent. There's basically zero little annoyances or points of friction with this one, and I think that makes it a great default pick. And what's best is that installing it's really simple. You just import the profile that I supply. It's just an Elf UI string. You import it, you hit go, and that's it. It's pretty much done. Then the next part of this is weak auras. Now, you can create your own. Now, one thing that's quite nice is that Wowhead made a brilliant tutorial for weak auras quite recently. Another thing you can go to, though, is wago.io, which is a weak aura. It's like a site ran by the weak auras team, and it basically hosts loads of different weak auras profiles. You can head on there, you can look for your class, and you can use that to browse different weak auras presets and find one that suits you. That's something that I find is very useful to do for just about every class and spec in the game, and usually someone else, realistically, someone else has probably made a better weak aura setup than what you'll make yourself or what I'll make myself, so it makes sense to just go there, see what rises to the top, and give that a go. So normally I use that on top of the standard UI, and that's pretty much how I roll. Next up, we've got the Immersive UI. Now, this is for like the standard keyboard mouse setup, and the goals of this one are really simple. It's all about having a relatively small amount of UI, but not so little that it becomes frustrating. What UI is there though? Well, that is supposed to be visually cohesive so that nothing feels out of place, and it feels more modern than the default WoW UI. And I found GW2 UI, which is an add-on. It aims to create the UI of Guild Wars 2, and that was the perfect tool for the job. It's got gorgeous art, great UX. I then disable its questing module and I use immersion instead. Now, immersion replaces the default quest frames with ones that are in the style of the talking head UI from Legion. It also splits up the text into nice small chunks so that it can be read at a glance, and this drastically increases your reading speed, and it just makes onboarding lore so much easier. I then of course use the action cam along with dynamic cam, which is a fantastic add-on that unlocks otherwise impossible to access settings for the action cam, including giving it different behaviors for different situations. Basically, this just allows the action cam to really accentuate the action and frame your character in a more cinematic way, and basically at an angle that will give you more 3D depth than the standard camera, which, while it is third person, it's locked directly to the back of your character's head. That's something that's only ever done in MMORPGs, and there's a reason why like third person character action games don't do that. Now, I wouldn't really recommend it for hardcore play, but if you want to take things a bit more slowly and enjoy the new lore, it's pretty good. After all, the raids come out like 3 weeks after launch, so there's really not that much pressure. And then finally, we've got the console UI. So of the three ones I'm covering today, this diverges from the norm the most. That's because its goal is to entirely change the gameplay feel of World of Warcraft, transforming it from an efficiency-focused MMORPG with little immersion in its UX to something that feels a lot more like a console action RPG. Now look, this is not going to be God of War, but it is going to give you a different enough experience to fundamentally change how it plays, or feels to play, World of Warcraft. It's all about immersion, it's all about making the world feel as large and expansive as we can, so we're using CONSOLEPORT as our main UI. This gives us brilliant controls, a brilliant UI, and amazing quality of life features for making WoW work with a controller. Of course, like, you can still browse your bags and have hotbars and stuff really easily with this. It's just brilliant. Now, I've set up my UI in such a way that the area around your character is totally free. It's not too dissimilar to the UI of action RPGs like Dark Souls and God of War. You might wonder why, and it's really simple. It's because I want there to be as little UI in your direct area of vision as is possible, bar stuff like, say, the personal resource display. I think this helps with immersion quite a bit, and then also with the action cam, it helps to frame the action better so that you can actually see all of these great new like ability animations that were brought in with Legion. Then the WoW classes, they're all simple to play at their core, so the number of buttons plus a trigger modifier is more than enough to make them work, and normally I have my core abilities being on the face buttons and then RB kind of being like my alt, as if it was, say, you know, maybe using like Overwatch as an analogy there. I think that this makes for a version of WoW that's very easy to control. It has very satisfying combat that's really, it's more satisfying than it's got any damn right to be. It's a very different way to play World of Warcraft, that's for sure, but when I think about the audience who watches this channel and how broad that audience is, I think that this will really bring a lot of enjoyment to probably a small number of people. Next, let's talk about key binding. So key binding is not a sexy topic, but I think that having good binds is really important. So reviewers criticize games for having bad controls because bad controls make a game less playable. It therefore stands to reason that having good key binding set up, it literally is something that makes the game more playable and therefore more fun. So first, I use an MMO mouse. I know the Preach recommends against them, and I get why. The idea is that being sort of tied to a peripheral, that's fine, but as soon as you don't have it, you're screwed. And yeah, that's fine, but over 10 years, that's never been an issue for me, so yeah, I use mouse bindings for my combat abilities, just the regular rotational stuff, and then a shift modifier that gets thrown in for cooldowns. Those are all extremely quick to access buttons that for me are just so damn easy to click and extremely comfortable. There is, however, another easily accessible set of buttons, those around the WASD cluster. I use these for utility and movement. More importantly, I standardize it across all of my characters. So my primary interrupt is almost always on R, then V is a stun or something similar, E is health, F is a personal damage reduction cooldown, and Q is movement. I will then use a shift modifier for all of those, so that, say, Q could be Fell Rush, Shift Q could be Vengeful Retreat, or maybe Disengage, and then Harpoon on a Survival Hunter. I then roll with movement key bindings that are different from normal, so I unbind Q and E, which are normally strafe, and then I bind strafe to A and D, so W, A, and D are movement. I used to unbind S for more utility space, but I found that the accidental press rate of that was a little bit too high, and sometimes you just need to backpedal like half a meter backwards. In that case, backpedaling is fine. Backpedaling is really only a problem if you're doing it for more than half a second, in which case you should really just do a quick 90-degree flick, strafe, and then flick back. Now, I found all of this to be a pretty damn playable setup. I have very fast reactions on everything. There are no awkward buttons, there are no finger gymnastics. It's all really great, and then by standardizing utility buttons by type, it allows me to have fast reactions on every class that I play. So there you go, that is my thoughts on keybinds, that is my thoughts on the different UIs that I use. Of course, the one that for me will be getting 95% of the playtime is the generic UI, because that's the one that's the most gameplay optimized. That normally plus a weak aura if I'm, really trying to, do proper content. And for weak auras, I go to wago.io to grab import strings that other people have shared, because you know what? They're brilliant, and I don't think I can make better. So that's pretty much how I'm rolling with my UI in Battle for Azeroth. Overall, pretty damn easy to set up, and I think very effective, great one-size-fits-all solution. Let me know what you are doing though, so if you maybe want to throw a picture of your UI onto Imager or something and drop it in the comments, I'd be dead keen to see what sort of stuff you're all rolling with. But yeah, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.